Why are manufacturing leaders, plant owners, operations managers struggling with employee retention, manufacturing productivity, and engagement on the shop floor? It's because managers, they're trying to fix the problem on the floor. Supervisors are left without the skill to coach and lead. And that problem is costing you the results in safety, productivity, in quality, and in your best people, losing them. And the answer is in the chocolate fountain effect. And the chocolate fountain effect explains what this problem is. Because if you think about a chocolate fountain, like I like chocolate, I hope you do. Maybe you don't. But if you've seen a chocolate fondue, you go into a fancy place, that chocolate's coming out of the top, it's flowing. And then these trays, they get wider and wider and wider. And then you've got this pool of chocolate at the bottom. Maybe you're going to dip your pineapple or a piece of your banana in there with that stick, and it's just so good, right? Well, is the chocolate taste any different at the bottom of that pool as it does coming right out of the top? Well, maybe something happens along the way that the bottom doesn't taste as good, but it doesn't taste better at the bottom than it does coming out of the top. So that's a lot of our leadership behaviors. So the behaviors that we get and how we show up at the top of the organization is going to flow through. If you think of those tiers as like your owner or the general manager at the top, and then the next ring is your managers, the next ring is your supervisors, and then your team leaders or frontline leaders. And then in that pool in the bottom is your team members, your engineers, your payroll staff, like everybody working together in that manufacturing organization to make this beautiful transcend of chocolate or whatever you're manufacturing in your plant all come together, because how we show up impacts on how people feel, and how we make them feel determines the extent to which we can engage with them. And those behaviors compound through your organization and will impact all your results. And I learned this because I spent 25 years doing it and doing some mistakes and then learning what worked well. And then the last 10 years, I've been doing the executive coaching and working with owners like Ryan Forte out of Windsor, Ontario. And he runs his company that him and his father started, Jefferson Metal Products. And so Ryan and I started working together. Great leader, great owner, great intentions, and needed a few tweaks in his behavior that he just didn't see. He'd come in there and there'd be problems with, team members on the shop floor. There'd be some turnover, there'd be some performance issues, and he would go right in there and work with them, just like he'd work in there and try to help fix the presses as well. All good. However, he was having a lot of turnover, and that was affecting his productivity, his output, and his profits. So when he did his Leadership 360 with me from Genos and started doing some work on his behaviors, we really identified very quickly that Ryan's behavior was driving a lot of the problems. So by going directly to the floor and having his say in everything and going, from the top directly to that shop floor, he was skipping, his general manager, his supervisor, and that was causing disconnect because we want to connect the top to the shop. Ryan slowed down, got a little bit more curious because what we were hearing was, well, we got to wait to hear what Ryan says, or we need to make sure that, Ryan's happy because they liked him. He's a good guy. However, it wasn't working because when the general manager wasn't involved or the supervisors, it created these other disconnect problems and inconsistency in behavior. Slow it down, come with curiosity. He started asking his leadership team more questions. Like, hey, what's going on with this team member? How are we addressing that? What's going on with this behavior? Or just kind of opening it up to them, and kind of took a step back because that's what the team needed. He started to show up differently, more as support, more as a coach, and let the general manager coach that supervisor, and let the supervisor mentor the frontline team leader, and let the frontline team leader address any behavior concerns that were outside of the values of Jefferson Metal Products. And guess what? Everything started to turn around. Ownership started to happen at each level because the skill got better at each level. And then Ryan wasn't going in there and maybe causing some unintentional consequences. So actually, by stepping back, being curious, supporting that level, and really getting to the root cause of the problem, which was some of his own behaviors and how he was showing up. He started seeing better results because I heard it from the accounting manager that they had less turnover, less paperwork, less bringing new people in, and more just working together and enjoying manufacturing and being competitive in North America and still thriving today and getting better. That's what we need in Canada and the US and in North America, to come together and be as productive as we can with the people that we already have. We need to leverage the people we already have. So this chocolate fountain effect, it's coming up in my book as well. It's coming out in May 11th, 2027. And it's a foundation because it resonates with people. And when you step back, because often the problem on the surface is not the real problem. There's a problem beneath the problem. Example was another coaching conversation I was in last week. Again, excellent manager, got promoted running this manufacturing plant, but had some problems because they hired some new people. Let's say they hired 20 people. When you hire 20 people, these are the people that stayed, right? Past the 90 days, because that's another podcast for turnover in the first 90 days. But once you hit the 90-day mark, there's that period between that point and about a year. And you start to really see different behaviors of people maybe coming through. And it's up to leadership as us to help maintain those behaviors, right? Setting those standards, having some transparent accountability. Because if we think about, how we lead people, we got to understand how we show up like Ryan did. We got to understand that they have clear expectations and talk about those expectations. What does that good look like? And then the third one is that accountability. Oh, yes. But accountability doesn't have to be uncomfortable. What we realized is that this manager was really good at what he did. What we couldn't understand is that, hey, maybe I should pull these team members in that are struggling a little bit, because they weren't like missing work all the time. It was just those maybe not as positive, maybe not as engaged. And when you have some people that are drifting from the core values and from the same energy level and the same contribution as everybody else, well, that can bring the whole group down. So you need to address that. So we start talking more about it, right? Like, what would be the impact of him like really getting involved in and trying to figure out, like, are these people the right people to stay here long term? Do they just need some coaching? What is it? Well, you can't keep getting promoted and cascade your whole leadership principles and how you do it by doing it all yourself. So again, going back to the beginning of the podcast, we look at it management, we say, oh, there's a problem on the shop floor. I need to go fix that. Well, if we take a step back into the chocolate fountain effect, go back to where the chocolate's coming from. What's the next layer? So what's going on with the supervisors, right? Because that's the next level of responsibility. How are they able to coach those frontline leaders, not only for courage, but just for the skill? I know I can remember times in my career, I just didn't know how to approach that conversation. So when a plant manager sees someone talking on their phone for 2 minutes and phones aren't allowed on the floor, a lot of times they'll say, hey, who's going to hold this guy accountable? What's going on? The real question we need to be asking is, what else is going on the shop floor? How are our leaders feeling supported? So the individual I'm talking about, the manager of this plant with the new hires, what he's doing right now is he's going to sit with the supervisors and not reprimand them, just have a deeper conversation of what did they see? What are their roadblocks to coach those frontline leaders to address the core values demonstrated through the behavior of team members, just to reinforce what we're doing here, how we work together, how we respect each other, how we add value. So we've got a couple different aspects of how you can be thinking about right now in your organization. What's your chocolate fountain look like? Because whatever's coming out of the top is going to affect how it's coming through the bottom. And you can't just run down to the whole pool and try to address it yourself. So that's a leadership chocolate fountain effect. I hope you get some value out of that. If anything, it's just to think about it. And I've noticed, whether it's in my keynotes or whatnot, that I bring this up, or just a conversation, you and I talking, and decided to do a whole episode on this. So thanks for joining us today. If you can take one action for me, the podcast has gone weekly. Our newsletter has now gone weekly. It was monthly. We share different information that I can't get through in the podcast through the newsletter. If you go to manufacturinggreatness.com/subscribe, grab onto our newsletter. It can give you different tidbits. You can scan it. I know you're busy. And I know that you are occupied and you are fully tapped out. So go down there. The link will be in the show notes, and I'll see you next week.